نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So as we continue discussing the book Talkhis Nukhbatul Fikr by one of the Mashaykh who have done a mukhtasar, a summary of the book of Ibn Hajar Asqalani alayhi rahmatullahi ta'ala. So this book, it covers matters regarding ilm al-mustalah, al-hadith or ulum al-hadith. And in the last session that we had, that we started discussion as mentioned in this talkhis that covers the matter regarding hadith al-mursal. So hadith al-mursal, and what are those the points that relate to this particular discussion. So in the first session we discussed certain matters regarding hadith al-mursal. So we have gone over in previous lesson as a quick overview or review of what we have covered, that we have mentioned regarding concern at hadith al-mursal, that what is said by the ulama regarding this matter. So of the things we have mentioned, what is defined as mursal. So you have a khilaf between the ulama as to what is defined as hadith al-mursal, and we have given those aqwal, and also I've stated the view that is said to be the more correct view of hadith al-mursal. And as they mentioned, ma'udifa at-tabihi nabi alayhi salam. So what have been attributed to the Prophet alayhi salam by way of a at-tabi'i. So that is what defined as hadith al-mursal. So hadith al-mursal ma'udifa at-tabihi النبي عليه السلام أو ما يرفع التابعي النبي عليه السلام. So what have been reported or attributed to the Prophet عليه السلام by way of a tabi'i. And also we discussed matters regarding al-mursal, that the ulama have mentioned that hadith al-mursal of two types. So hadith al-mursal qismain, mursal as-sarih, and that's the bulk of our discussion regarding this topic, which is mursal as-sarih, and also mursal al-khafi, which is another topic to be discussed later. So most of what we're discussing is hadith al-mursal as-sarih, and that's the definition that we have given regarding hadith al-mursal. Also we have discussed matters pertaining to, so of those matters of those misal hadith al-mursal. So hadith al-mursal, for example, they have mentioned and Sa'id ibn Musayyib radiyallahu anhu قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كان أحدكم في مسجد فلا يشبكن أصابعه. So Sa'id ibn Musayyib has stated, reported upon the Prophet alayhi salam, that the Prophet alayhi salam has stated, إذا كان أحدكم, if any of you في المسجد, if any of you are inside the masjid, then he should not do this between his hand, should not clasp his hand. So he mentioned regards to that concerning that one is not to do this, so interlock between one fingers while inside the masjid. So that hadith is said to be mursal based upon the hadith is narrated by Sa'id ibn Musayyib upon the Prophet ﷺ directly. So Sa'id ibn Musayyib is a tabi'i kabir, narrated upon the Prophet ﷺ. So between him and the Prophet ﷺ is others, between himself and the Prophet ﷺ is others. So that hadith is said to be mursal, where a saqt, a breakage occurred at the end of the hadith. So a breakage have occurred at the end of the hadith by way of the side of the tabi'i. So then we discuss concerning hukum hadith al-mursal, that also you find a khilaf between the ulama as to hukum hadith al-mursal. So hadith al-mursal, regarding that the ulama of hadith have taken the position that hadith al-mursal is considered to be hadith which is da'if. So it is considered amongst those hadith that are said to be of the grade of hadith da'if, based upon that there's a saqt, based upon that there's a breakage in the isnad. So we have outlined previously in hadith al-sahih and hadith al-hasan that the hadith, for it to be graded as maqbool, acceptable, there must be a ittisal al-sanad. It must be of a continuous chain of narrators from start through to the end. So if there's any breakage have occurred, then hadith is said to be, in this case, mursal, due to a breakage occurring at the end of the hadith. So amongst the ulama of hadith, said to be hadith ad-daif. Then another matter, and you have different aqwal on that matter. We have stated some aqwal of the ulama on that matter. And also you'll find that where the views on this matter regarding hukum hadith al-mursal, that it raised to over 10 plus views. So over 13 views between the ulama on this matter. But overall the view of al-hadith, that by way of hadith, narration, ilm al-hadith, is considered to be hadith al-daif. Then other aqwal of the ulama on this matter, but overall it's considered to be hadithun daif. Then the next discussion that relates to this is Hujjiyat Hadith al-Mursal. So our next matter between the ulama, Hadith al-Mursal, is it considered to be a hujjah or not? Of the ulama who mentioned that it can be used as a proof, as an evidence, if there are certain conditions in place. So Imam Shafi and others who have mentioned there are certain condition, if those conditions are in place, then that will raise the hadith to al-mursal, to be in one that which can be accepted as a proof, even though there's a breakage, a weakness in the hadith. But due to other factors, then it is considered to be a form of hujjah. It's used as a proof, even though there's a slight weakness in the hadith. And they consider hadith al-mursal as-sahih. That would be hadith which is said to be mursal as-sahih. As for hadith mursal al-da'if, it's mursal, plus also there's other factors that mean hadith da'if, then that will, the hadith will not be used as a proof. But only those that are said to be hadith al-mursal as-sahih, then those ones, some of the ulama use it as a hujjah, as a proof. So a difference regarding hukum hadith al-mursal min haythu sanad, and also hukum hadith al-mursal min haythu hujjiyah. Also of those things that we have mentioned regarding concerning hadith al-mursal, the ulama have mentioned regarding concerning that. So in continuing that, also we mentioned case of hadith al-mursal that are not considered regarding marasil, that are mentioned by young sahaba who did not met or heard from the Prophet ﷺ, who did not heard from the Prophet ﷺ because of they were very young in age, below the age of Tamiz, newly born, but they met the Prophet ﷺ, that they consider to be Sahaba, but their hadith is considered to be on the category of hadith Kibar Tabi'in. So their hadith will be considered to be of the level of that of Kibar Tabi'in, based upon they did not hear from the Prophet ﷺ directly or heard anything from him. So their hadith will be considered to be from hadith hadith Kibar al-Tabi'in. The next of those topics, the matter that are discussed regarding hadith al-Mursal, that will now continue regarding what they define as hadith Mursal al-Sahabi. Mursal al-Sahabi. So hadith that is said to be referred to by the ulama Mursal al-Sahabi. So a Sahabi narrating hadith which is said to be Mursal. What is that? What is considered? So how it is defined? The ulama have mentioned regarding hadith Mursal al-Sahabi, they mention ma rawahu sahabi, what have been narrated by a sahabi, and the Nabi alayhi salam, upon the Prophet alayhi salam, lam yasma'hu minhu, where he did not hear that hadith from the Prophet alayhi salam. So hadith Mursal al-Sahabi is when a companion of the Prophet alayhi salam who narrates upon the Prophet alayhi salam a hadith that he did not hear from the Prophet alayhi salam directly. So that's considered to be hadith Mursal al-Sahabi, where hadith is with a Sahaba who met the Prophet ﷺ, heard from the Prophet ﷺ, but is narrating a hadith upon the Prophet ﷺ that he did not hear himself. He heard it from someone else upon the Prophet ﷺ. So they mentioned that, and that could be either sigar as-sin, either because the Sahabi was young in age, he was, or such as Ibn Abbas, or it could be another reason for this is with a Sahabi that he accepted Islam later on, such as the case of Abu Hurairah, who narrate so cases of those cases, or you find that cases where you find that like for example they mentioned the case regarding Omar ibn Khattab, that he used to alternate between himself and another Sahabi from the Ansar, that one would spend a time with the Prophet ﷺ, then the person who was the Prophet ﷺ, he would narrate to the other that was absent what he heard. So they alternate. And the one who, because Omar, they were busy at times doing their own things of their business, attend to their own affairs. So they'll alternate regarding time spent with the Prophet ﷺ. So one day, one would spend with the Prophet ﷺ. Whatever he heard, he would communicate to the other who was absent. So they would function in that manner. So those are reasons regarding a Sahabi narrating upon another Sahabi. So in those cases, the person that they heard the hadith from will be a Sahaba. So one Sahaba narrating upon a Sahaba because which that Sahabi he heard from the Prophet ﷺ that particular hadith. So as for the hukum of the ruling regarding Mursal al-Sahabi, then ulama يختلف بين العلماء on this matter. But overall, regarding that they mention that مقبول. That of the ulama who mentions that Hadith al-Mursal, so the ulama have stated regarding Hadith al-Mursal, of those who say it is مقبولة. Hadith Mursal Sahabi مقبول. And of those who mentioned, which is Jumhur of the ulama, and of those who take the position that Mursal Sahabi also غير مقبول. But the correct view is that that is considered to be with the ulama, that it is Hadith al-Maqbul. It is considered to be Hadith Maqbul. That's concerning Mursal al-Sahabi. The next of those discussion that they have mentioned regarding concerning Hadith al-Mursal, Asbab Irsal. So Asbab, reason behind why one may one may narrate hadith by way of irsal, by way of the tabi'in. So they mentioned regarding that, of those reasons regarding why one may relate such hadith, that I mentioned one, that that one may hear the hadith from majmu' min shuyukhihi thiqat. So one heard the hadith from majmu' min shuyukhihi thiqat. So based upon that, he would and he know the hadith to be authentic, because he knew the sources from whom he received the hadith to be thiqat, people are trustworthy, credible, and of precise and memorize the hadith. So he narrate the hadith that so he narrate the hadith and he would remove of his teachers based upon he believed that knowing them to be those who are thiqat. So he would narrate the hadith direct upon the Prophet ﷺ, because those between himself and the Prophet ﷺ are thiqat or ishuyukh. So that's a reason regarding irsal. So the tabi'i, knowing that the person that you receive the hadith from is known from this, so he would somewhat remove or skip that narrator and go directly to the Prophet ﷺ. So that's the reason, because that he has confidence in the integrity of those that he narrates upon. So at times narrate the hadith on that fashion. So they mentioned that Ibrahim al-Nakhai, of those who would have do of this, based upon that he mentioned that he narrate concerning that that on Ibn Mas'ud. So Ibn Mas'ud was of the one that he know of Ibn Mas'ud, as-Sahabi Jalil. So he would just narrate the hadith directly at times upon the Prophet ﷺ, knowing that those between himself and the Prophet ﷺ are thiqat, wal udul. So that's of the reason of that, of sometime it being done. So without naming and repeating those names, they just narrate the hadith direct upon the Prophet ﷺ. Another reason that could be that a person nasiya. So at times that a person that he forgot who the person that have narrated to him to that hadith. So due to that matter, but he still recalled the matan. So he still recalled the hadith text, but he forgot those who a shaykh that he had narrated the hadith upon. So he mentioned the hadith by way of the matan and skip the narrator based upon he have forgotten who narrated that hadith. So at times this may occur. This may occur. And also at times it could be ikhtisar, that a person wish to use the hadith as a proof, as an evidence. So he wants to somewhat go straight to the matan. So he does narrate the hadith direct upon the Prophet ﷺ. So try to skip all the narrator and the isnad and narrate the hadith direct upon the Prophet ﷺ based upon he wished to use the matan as a text. So his objective is to get to the matan of the hadith, the text of the hadith. So he does narrate the hadith as sometimes sometimes the reason behind al-irsal. Also that the person may do so based upon that issue may be young in age, or it could be that they're daif, so he narrate the hadith irsalan, that skipping those shuyud. Or at times that a person have shak, is the hadith have a complete chain, or their hadith it has a breakage. So at times he would just use the irsal based upon he has doubt whether the hadith has the complete chain or the hadith does have an incomplete chain. So he just goes straight to the Prophet ﷺ because of that doubt regarding al-ittisal or irsal. And at times, as some of the ulama, at times that you have already maybe previously mentioned the hadith. So rather than repeating the isnad again, you just mention the hadith by mentioning the text directly, and also of those reason behind this, and also of so those are, and also at times will be qasd yani tadhakur. So mabab al-mudhakira, of time that they are somewhat having time of mentioning hadith concerning tadhakur, they're reminding each other of the hadith, or in lessons. So just mention the hadith without the isnad, and just more is mentioned the matan. Bin bab mudhakira. So in reviewing the hadith and studying the hadith and discussing the hadith, then they will at times mention the hadith irsalan. So that's concerning of the reason behind why of those who may sometimes narrate the hadith in this fashion of irsal, not mention directly the Prophet Islam in the hadith. And next matter is discussed regarding irsal. A person who falls into this, is this a form of jar to that narrator? The person who narrates hadith mursal in this fashion, is this considered to be something that is a jar, a ta'an upon the narrator? Does this make the narrator considered to be da'if because of him narrating hadith in this fashion? So the ulama mentioned regarding that, that you have many narrators, or some narrators. So of those narrators that have been described as being of those who does of this practice of, they'll relate the hadith irsalan in this fashion. That but with this, and with this knowledge that they do fall into this, they do not consider them to be people who are daif. So it's not a reason by itself at all that will make the narrator considered to be daif, because he does of the act of irsal, narrate the hadith mursala. So it's not a reason on its own at times that will make or consider that will make others hold that narrator to be daif. That the narrator be daif because of irsal, that at times for other factors, that for example, that he is not very careful of whom he narrates upon, or he does this, or if there's other factors, but ordinarily that the narrator is not something that will be hold against him and cause him to be considered to be him to be daif. So you have narrators such as Ata ibn Rabah, that it is mentioned regarding that of those who have give mention regarding that in his tarjuma, they mention Ata ibn Abi Rabah, they mention thiqa. So regarding Ata ibn Abi Rabah, of those that are what is mentioned about him in brief, they mention thiqatun faqihun fadil, that the person said to be thiqa, faqih, fadil, a person who's outstanding. ولكنه, but kathir irsal, but also they mention لكنه kathir irsal, but he fall into irsal a lot. So based upon this, he's still described as thiqa, he's still said to be a faqih, still said to be a person of fadil. So, but also they would make note that he does also this act of a lot, which is narrating hadith in this fashion of irsal. So this is a practice, so this will be noted. Also you'll find regarding that other narrators who is mentioned regarding this matter. So it's not at all times used as something that would be a reason for them to make a jar, say something which is disparaging statements about the narrator. So that's something to take into account. So it becomes a jar based upon that the person that narrates, for example, and those who are said to be du'afa or majahil. So people who are unknown, people are said to be daif, and he does this a lot, then that then become a matter that some caution would be taken regarding such a narrator who have this pattern and this way of approach. So regarding concerning that, let us give a little more further discussion regarding Hadith Mursal Sahabi, as is mentioned here, that as for the hukum, that I mentioned that the ulama mentioned that they put them into two categories. Mursal as-Sahabi, so giving more detail to Hadith Mursal as-Sahabi, and we already defined it, which is Hadith alladhi sami'ahu Sahabi, so a person who have heard upon the Prophet ﷺ, but did not hear the specific Hadith. So a person who heard from the Prophet ﷺ, but he may narrate something he did not hear directly upon the Prophet ﷺ, and in most cases that he heard the Hadith from a Sahabin Akhar. So them, a Sahabi narrated upon another Sahabi, something he did not hear from the Prophet ﷺ. They mentioned that as for the hukum of this Mursal Kibar as-Sahaba, then that is Hadi Maqbul Mutlaqa. So the Kibar as-Sahaba, then that is Maqbul Mutlaqan. Then we have a next chapter regarding Sigar as-Sahaba. So as for the Sigar as-Sahaba, then either they fall into two halatain. So the first of those situation that man adrak the Prophet ﷺ, those who met the Prophet ﷺ from the Sahaba, mumayyiz, and is of those age which is of a good enough age. So of those who met the Prophet ﷺ and of a good age, over 7, 8, 9 of that age, then is that they mentioned regarding concerning that so because of that age of idrak, then is mursal, then is considered to be of that of the kibar sahaba, is acceptable. So those who are mumayyiz from the sahaba but still young, then their narration is still considered to be acceptable. Then we have others, the next category of sahabi, sigar, are those who are the youngsters among the sahaba, but when they met the Prophet ﷺ, that they were غير مميز, very young boy, a child, a baby. So he saw the Prophet ﷺ, but didn't hear anything from the Prophet ﷺ. As for those cases that they mention regarding to of example of those Sahaba who fall into this category, they mention Ubaydullah ibn Adi ibn Khiyar. So of those, Ubaydullah ibn Adi ibn Khiyar, also of that category of young Sahabi who met the Prophet ﷺ or saw the Prophet ﷺ but didn't hear anything from him directly. Because also غير مميز. They mention of those Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. So their narration are considered to be that of Kibar at-Tabi'i. Their narration considered to be from the category of Kibar at-Tabi'in. So that Sahabi was a youngster who met the Prophet ﷺ and he was still couldn't speak, just a baby, infant, didn't hear anything from the Prophet ﷺ, just saw the Prophet ﷺ, then his narration will be put in the category of those of the Kibar at-Tabi'in. So example of Mursal as-Sahabi and Ibn Zubair قال محمد عليه الصلاة والسلام من لبس الحرير في الدنيا لم يلبسه في الآخرة. So the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith of Ibn Zubair, that he stated concerning that Ibn Zubair, that he said the Prophet ﷺ have stated in this hadith, من لبس حرير, the one who wears gold في الدنيا, in this dunya, لم يلبسه في الآخرة, he would not wear of it, he would not be adorned with it in the Akhirah. They mentioned that other hadith in the Bukhari. أخرجه Bukhari. هذا hadith that I mentioned that this hadith was not heard by Ibn Zubair from the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, he heard this hadith from Omar. So this hadith that he mentioned upon the Prophet ﷺ, he did not hear the hadith directly from the Prophet ﷺ. Rather, he heard the hadith from Omar ibn Khattab. But he narrated it directly upon the Prophet ﷺ. And I mentioned that fall into Marasil as-Sahaba. And this is stated by Ad-Daraqutni alayhi rahmatullahi ta'ala, and also and others. As for the next level regarding Maratib al-Mursal, Hadith al-Mursal, they have Maratib. They have levels or degrees. So they mention regarding that of those degrees that they mention Ala'a, the highest level of this ما أرسله الصحابي ثبت سماعه. That a Sahabi, so the highest level of Hadith al-Mursal is that which is narrated by a Sahaba that heard from the Prophet ﷺ. So that's the highest level. The next level would be Man lahu ru'ya, of those Sahabi who saw the Prophet ﷺ. But I mentioned lam yuthbit sama'ahu, but there's nothing that been confirmed. It's not been confirmed that he heard directly from the Prophet ﷺ. So he met the Prophet ﷺ, but didn't hear anything directly from the Prophet ﷺ. So that's considered to be the next level. That Sahabi met the Prophet ﷺ, but did not heard anything directly from the Prophet ﷺ, but he narrated upon him. That would be through another Sahabi. The third level, they mention Mukhadramun. So the third level of the levels of Marasil, Mukhadramun. So Mukhadram, as we'll discuss concerning that, those who accepted Islam in the time of the Prophet Islam, but didn't met him at all. So those who accepted Islam, but didn't have any contact with the Prophet Islam at all, they mention as Mukhadram. So those also of a next level. So they're of those who accepted Islam in the time of the Prophet Islam while he was alive, but had no contact or met the Prophet Islam at all, or didn't see him or anything. But they were in that time, present during that time, Mukhadram. So that's a level of Irsal. The next level that they mention of Hadith of Irsal al-Mutqin. So those said to be Mutqin, and that's concerned from the Tabi'in. From the Tabi'in, from the Tabi'in. So those of the next level, the person known for his hifz. Then Mutqin. Then the next level, they mention, for example, in that level, Sa'id bin Musayyib. On that level, the next fifth level, Man yataharra fi shuyukhi kashu'ba wal mujahid. So you have also the next level will be of those who are very careful and selective regarding who they would take from their shuyukhs in their irsal. So of those who fall into this, Ash-Shabi and also Mujahid. So Mujahid wa Ash-Shabi, they fall into that category. So they were very precise and selective as to their form of irsal. So they were selective. So choosing the right ones that they hold to be thiqat. So that is being selective. Then the sixth level of Hadith al-Mursal, they mention Man ya'khud an kulli ahad. The person who takes from everyone. The one who narrates Hadith Mursal, but he will take from anyone. Don't make a distinction. Thiqat, Majahil, Duafa, he takes from everyone. So with that is also a level of Irsal. So those ones, one have to tawakkuf. One have to be very careful regarding that level of those who fall into that category. So that's concerning the level concerning Irsal. Of those things that are discussed regarding Hadith al-Mursal, then some of the ulama, they discuss regarding certain cases regarding Hadith al-Mursal, and they'll look at the hal of particular tabi'i. So they look at the hal, so look at the case of certain case regarding particular tabi'i, regarding their narrations of Hadith al-Mursal. So of those more renowned cases that are studied regarding Hadith al-Mursal, that they use the case regarding of those cases regarding, one, the case of Sa'id ibn Musayyib. Is the Marasil of Sa'id ibn Musayyib acceptable or not? So you have Imam Shafi and others have that discussion. So of the ulama, so you have that discussion who put those who accepts the Marasil of Sa'id ibn Musayyib and those who do not. Al-Rasid fi inqita', and those who give Sa'id ibn Musayyib a different category and due to his approach that he narrate mainly upon the Sahaba. And amongst those, Abu Hurairah and others. So overall, regarding you have those certain particular case study regarding particular tabi'i, regarding their case of the hadith of Murasil. So of those, Sa'id ibn Musayyib, those who accept and those who don't. Then also you have the case that is also studied between the ulama regarding Hassan al-Basri. Is his Murasil acceptable or not? So again, you have those who accept it and those who may not. Where some of them have discussed regarding that, some have stated regarding the Murasil, Hassan al-Basri, that of those who that have mentioned that as stated by Al-Bayhaqi, قال في معرفة السنن والآثار مراسيل الحسن يعني البصري غير قوي. So Al-Bayhaqi mentioned regarding that the marasil of Hassan al-Basri غير قوي. And others that الدارقطني قال مراسيله يعني حسن البصري يعني حسن فيها ضعف. There in it is weakness. Also you'll find regarding Ibn Sa'd صاحب الطبقات, Ibn Sa'd قال وما أرسل حسن يعني حسن البصري من حديث فليس بحجة. So what have been narrated by the marasil of Hassan al-Basri upon the Prophet Islam, ليس بحجة. It is not hujjah, is not a proof. So you find that that's the view taken regarding Hassan al-Basri. For example, you have Abdul Haq al-Ishbili in his book Bayan Wam wal Iham. He mentioned Marasil Hassan min ad'af Marasil. So he can somewhat mention that the Marasil of Hassan al-Basri of the weakest of Marasil. And others who have taken that view, An-Nawawi قال كل مراسيله, that all the marasil of Hassan al-Basri and Hassan al-Basri da'ifa, they are all weak. So you have the ulama have taken that position regarding, and others that even of contemporary, Sakhawi, Shawkani, and also of Muasir, Sheikh Albani, Sheikh Muqbil, that all take the view regarding that Marasil Hassan al-Basri is unacceptable. They are all weak. They're weak. Then others who take a different position regarding that is Taqwiyat Marasil Hassan al-Basri. So those who give him Yahya ibn Ma'in, so of those Imam Ahmed, Imam Shafi'i, who give some credibility to the Marasil of Hassan al-Basri, amongst them Al-Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed, Yahya al-Qattan, Yahya ibn Ma'in, Ibn Madini, Ali ibn Madini, Abu Zur'a al-Razi, Ibn and others, or Ibn Abdul Barr, Ibn Rajab, Ibn Hajar. So those of those names that we have mentioned, that they give some validity to the Marasil of Hassan al-Basri. So matter khilaf between al-ulama regarding Hassan al-Basri. So those are not individual cases. Also of those cases that are mentioned, that Marasil al-Zuhri, so Imam al-Zuhri, also those are mentioned, and others, Ibn Jurayj, Qatada. So you have those cases that are discussed regarding Marasil, Ash-Sha'bi, Mujahid. So you have those cases that are discussed regarding particular individuals amongst the Kibar at-Tabi'in. What have been mentioned regarding the cases regarding their Marasil. Are they acceptable or not? A next matter that is discussed regarding Marasil with the ulama, that that is mentioned استعمال مرسل بمعنى منقطع. So of the ulama, when they use the word mursal, they intend by this munqata. So at times the ulama may use the word mursal, but what is intended or meant by this is hadith munqata. So they see it as mursal sometimes is used or a substitute for hadith munqata. So they would say of that also that is something which is found among the ulama al-mutaqaddimin. So the ulama awail, the ulama, the early scholars of hadith, at times they will use the word mursal, but intend by this what is said to be hadith munqati'. There's a breakage in the isnad at any part of the isnad, whether at the beginning, the middle, or the end. So they will use the word, they will substitute the word mursal for munqati'. And a proof of this, that Khatib al-Baghdadi in the book Al-Kifaya, he mentioned, وَأَمَّا الْمُرْسَلِ. So as for al-mursal, فهو, it is, given a definition, he mentioned, مَا انقطع إسناد, what is, where there's a breakage in the isnad, بأن يكون في رواته من لم يسمعه, where the narrator did not heard it. ممن فوقه, from the one that is above him. So he meant by this, so what he mentioned that, what there's a breakage in the isnad, بأن يكون في رواته, where in the narrator within it did not heard from the one above him. That is said to be inqita'. So then I mentioned that illa, that he mentioned, so that it will be al-inqita'. Then he mentioned, so it doesn't distinguish between, so any breakage in isnad is said to be munqati', is said to be mursal. Then he mentioned illa, except, anna akthar, except that most majority, ma yusuf bi irsal, what have been described as irsal, min hayth al isti'mal, by way of how it is used, as how it is used, ma rawahu, what have been narrated, at-tabi'in, and Nabi al-Islam, upon the Prophet al-Islam, what have been narrated by a tabi upon the Prophet al-Islam, that is now what become, what is now, it's been now established as what is seen or defined as munqati', as what is mursal. So the ulama of awail at times use the word mursal, meaning al-inqita'. But eventually it became, then after, both became a separate term. Al-inqita' is used with a specific meaning, and also al-mursal is used carrying a separate meaning. With so after a while that they make a fasl, that they separate between both terms, al-inqita', munqati', wal mursal. But of the ulama of old, that at times they may use mursal intending al-inqita'. So for one to be mindful of this, that serve as a benefit to know this information, that in reading of the books of the ulama of old, what they actually intend by al-mursal. So what now been established, that there's a fasl, a clear division, separation between both those two terminologies. Munqati' carries its own definition, and mursal carries its own definition. الحاكم النيسابوري قال قل ما يوجد في الحفاظ ما يميز بينهما. So Al-Hakim, he mentioned that قل ما يوجد, that it is not much, few cases where that the Huffaz, the ulama of old, that they make a distinction between munqati' and mursal. قل ما يوجد. So very few cases we find that distinction between both from the Huffaz, from the ulama of old. So for a person to be mindful of this, and others who have somewhat explained this further, others who have explained this further. So you find Rashid ad-Din Attar, who died 662 قال جمهور المتقدمين, that majority of the ulama of the past, من علماء الرواة, of the narrators, the ulama of hadith, يسمون ما لم يتصل إسناده مرسل, anything that doesn't have a complete chain, a breakage, as mursal, that we will call today that is referred to as منقطع today. سواء كان مقطوعا أو معدلا. So it is something today مقطوع that or معدل as will be discussed. إلا أن أكثر ما يوصف بالإرسال من حيث الاستعمال ما رآه. So they mentioned, so those who didn't make a distinction, but then after a distinction was made regarding al-irsal became more widely used and more commonly used regarding what had been narrated by a tabi'i upon the Prophet ﷺ. So shows that at some point those who use both words al-mursal to have a more broader meaning, and then after those who then became used in a specific way after. So that's concerning that matter. Well, at times, also to bear in mind that of the ulama, in passing judgment on hadith and mursal, they said mursal sahih. Hadith, mursal, sahih. This also means that the hadith of those narrators that are present, that the isnad, they are thiqat, muttasil, up until the point of that tabi'i. So the hadith from the start, up until the tabi'i, that it is muttasil. Also those narrators said to be thiqat. So it is created as up until the person who is the tabi'i, everything is in place regarding that the narrators fit the category of thiqat. Ittisal up until the point of that tabi'i. So it's referred to as hadith. They might say hadith mursal as-sahih. So mursal mean that is go back to the tabi'i, but so that also so something to be mindful of this. The next of those things to be discussed regarding hadith al-mursal, works on this topic. So musannifat fi hadith al-mursal. Of those who have mentioned regarding of sources or references for hadith al-mursal, books that you will find that hadith al-mursal would be within those books. So you have books of hadith. So you have books of hadith. So books of masadir hadithiyah, that you might find hadith al-mursal being mentioned within these books. Or mean hadith, books of hadith that have isnad, that the ulama mention of those books that you will find this occurring, that of those works, Jami' al-Tirmidhi. So the book of Jami' al-Tirmidhi that you will find within this book of hadith, Marasil. You find hadith, Marasil within the books of Jami' al-Tirmidhi, as highlighted by Shaykh Nuruddin al-Itr. So he mentioned that you'll find in the book Jami' al-Tirmidhi, the book of al-Tirmidhi, that you'll find hadiths that are some hadith that are marasil within this collection. Also, Sheikh al-Muhaddith Abdullah Sa'd, that I've mentioned also of sources of hadith al-marasil, that he mentioned Musannif Ibn Abi Shaybah. So in the book of Musannif Ibn Abi Shaybah, that you find hadith which is said to be marasil. Also, he mentioned Muwatta Imam Malik. So also in the book of Muwatta Imam Malik, as he mentioned, فيهما كثير من marasil. In these two sources, Musannif Ibn Abi Shaybah and the book of Muwatta Imam Malik, you'll find a hadith that are said to be marasil within those collection. So those are somewhat books that you will come across hadith al-marasil. Also, they are mentioned of other books or works on those that try to discuss hadith al-marasil as a single topic, So you have books that are geared in particular to discuss Hadith al-Mursal, which is one of the topics of Ilm al-Hadith. So as we say, topic-led, by way of discussing this aspect of Ilm al-Hadith, in particular, Hadith al-Mursal or Marasil. So of those who have written books on this topic, in specific, that you have of those Marasil, the book that is titled Marasil, and the author of that book, Imam Abi Dawud Sulaiman ibn Ashat as-Sijistani. So Imam Abu Dawud as-Sijistani, the author of Sunan Abi Dawud, he has a book that is called Marasil. And he died 275. So he has this book, Marasil. But as mentioned, that concerned that this book of Marasil, that Abu Dawud ended Marasil and Munqata. So within it, of the ulama of old, that within this book is not Marasil as we know it fully as, it will also include a Marasil in a more broader meaning of Hadith Marasil of the Sahaba, the Tabi'in, and also Hadith al-Munqata will be found in this collection. So, and that book is in print. Also another of those who have authored on this topic in specific, Marasil also, they mention Imam Abi Muhammad Abdurrahman ibn Imam al-Jalil Abi Hatim al-Razi, Abu Hatim al-Razi. So this particular Ibn Abi Hatim al-Razi, that have a book called Marasil. He has a book called Marasil, and this book also, it's in print, a book that is in print, and also kind of somewhat, so also with this book, within what is contained within this book, Marasil, Ibn Abi Hatim, that who died 327 al-Hijri, that within you find Hadith Marasil, but also you find in it Hadith that relates to Munqata, Model, and the likes. So again, more broader, outside what is said to be Mursal, narration upon the Tabi'i, also have included Hadith which is said to be Munqata and other Hadith. Another of those works on this book, on this topic, a book that is titled Jami' at-Tahsil fi Ahkam Marasil. Jami' Tahsil fi Ahkam Marasil. And the author of this book is Imam Abu Sa'id Ala'i. So this book by Ala'i, also of those books that are in print, where in this book he discusses concerning different factors regarding Hadith al-Munqata, and also mention regarding Asma Mudallisin and Munqata, and things regarding Ahkam Marasil. So also of that book is in print. Another of those who have done some work on this topic, another work, Tuhfat al-Tahsil fi Dhikri Rawat Marasil. And this is done by Al-Hafidh al-Iraqi. So it is mentioned Abi Zur'a Waliyuddin al-Iraqi, and he died 826, where he discussed regarding Hadith al-Mursala, and also discussed some of those narrators who are said to be, who fall into, that are known for this. So discuss concerning Hadith narrators. So he mentioned, and also some of their Hadith. So a book that mentioned regarding the Ahkam, and also the practical aspect regarding of those who are known or said to be known for this, and also example of their cases. And he kind of somewhat build on what is mentioned by Ala'i. So he built upon what is mentioned by Ala'i in his work. So those are of works and others, but these are of some of those works on this particular topic. So these are of those cornerstone books on this topic. So in a nutshell, this is regarding Hadith, the second part of Hadith al-Mursal. So in the previous session, Session 1, we discuss some aspect of Hadith al-Mursal, and then this is a continuation of Hadith al-Mursal. So this can somewhat give us a general idea of some of those mabahis, some of what is discussed regarding Hadith al-Mursal. So this, inshallah ta'ala, will end this session, and we'll discuss what follows next regarding this muqtasar of Nukhbatul or Talkhis, Nukhbatul Fikr. So this, inshallah ta'ala, will end this session. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهادي إلى السبيل والآخر دعوانا الحمد لله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وبالله توفيق.